Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Western Canon Challenge, where we are reading the entirety of the Western literary canon out loud. Today we continue in The Well at the World's End. We are on chapter 36, this entitled The Talk of Two Women Concerning Ralph. And with that, I'll get started. But when dinner was done, came David and a man with him, bringing Ralph's war gear, and bade him do it on while the folk were fencing the lists, which they were doing with such stuff as they had at the tower. And the Lord had been calling for Otter, that he might command him what he should tell to the marshals of the lists, and how all they should be duly ordered. Wherefore he went up unto the tower whither the Lord had now gone. So Ralph did on his armor, which was not right meet for tilting, being overlight for such work, and his shield in especial was but a target for a sergeant, which he had brought at Cheaping Knowe. But he deemed that his deftness and much use should bear him well through. Now the lady had abided in her pavilion when her lord went abroad. Anon after she sent all her women away, save one whom she loved, and to whom she was wont to tell the innermost of her mind. Though forsooth she mishandled her at whiles, for she was hot of temper and over-ready with her hands when she was angry, though she was nowise cruel. But the woman aforesaid, who was sly and sleek, and somewhat past her first youth, took both her caresses and her buffets with patience, for the sake of the gifts and the largesse wherewith they were bought. So now she stood by the board in the pavilion, with her head drooping humbly, yet smiling to herself, and heedful of whatso might betide. But the lady walked up and down the pavilion hastily, as one much moved. At last she spake as she walked, and said, Agatha, didst thou see him when my lord pointed him out? Yea, said the woman, lifting her face a little. And what seemed he to thee? Said the lady. O my lady, quoth Agatha, what seemed he to thee? The lady stood and turned, and looked at her. She was slender and dark and sleek, and though her lip moved not, and her eyes did not change, a smile seemed to steal over her face, whether she would or not. The lady stamped her foot, and lifted her hand, and cried out, What? Dost thou deem thyself meet for him? And she caught her by the folds of her bosom. But Agatha looked up into her face with a simple smile, as of a child. Dost thou deem him meet for thee, my lady? He a thrall, and thou so great? The lady took her hand from her, but her face flamed with anger, and she stamped on the ground again. What dost thou mean? She said. Am I not great enough to have what I want when it lieth close to my hand? Agatha looked on her sweetly, and said in a soft voice, Stretch out thine hand for it then. The lady looked at her grimly, and said, I understand thy jeer. Thou meanest that he will not be moved by me, he being so fair, and I being but somewhat fair. Wilt thou have me beat thee? Nay, I will send thee to the White Pillar when we come home to Utterbol. The woman smiled again, and said, My lady, when thou hast sent me to the White Pillar, or the red or the black, my stripes will not mend the matter for thee, or quench the fear of thine heart, that by this time he is since a grown man, he loveth some other. Yet belike he will obey thee if thou command, even to the lying in the same bed with thee, for he is a thrall. The lady hung her head, but Agatha went on in her sweet clear voice, The Lord will think little of it, and say nothing of it, unless thou anger him otherwise, or unless, indeed, he be minded to pick a quarrel with thee, and hath baited a trap with his stripling. But that is all unlike. Thou knowest why, and how that he loveth the little finger of that new-come thrall of his, whom yet he left at home at Utterbol in his despite, better than all thy body, for all thy white skin and lovely limbs. Nay, now I think of it, I deem that he meaneth this gift to make an occasion for the staying of any quarrel with thee, that he may stop thy mouth from crying out at him. Well, what wilt thou do? He is a mighty lord. The lady looked up, for she had hung her head at first, her face all red with shame, yet smiling, though ruefully. And she said, Well, thou art determined that if thou art punished it shall not be for naught, but thou knowest not my mind. Yea, lady, said Agatha, smiling and despite herself, that may well be. Now the lady turned from her, and went and sat upon a stool that was near by. She said nothing for a while, only covering her face with her hands and rocking herself to and fro, while Agatha stood looking at her. At last she said, Hearken, Agatha, I must tell thee what lieth in mine heart, though thou hast been unkind to me, and hast tried to hurt my soul. Now thou art self-willed and hot-blooded, and not unlovely, so that thou mayest have loved and been loved ere now. But thou art so wily and subtle that mayhappen thou wilt not understand what I mean when I say that love of this young man hath suddenly entered into my heart, so that I long for him more this minute than I did the last, and the next minute shall long still more. And I long for him to love me, and not alone to pleasure me. Mayhappen it will so betide without any pushing the matter, said Agatha. Nay, said the lady, nay. My heart tells me that it will not be so, for I have seen him that he is of higher kind than we be, as if he were a god come down to us, who, if he might not cast his love upon a goddess, would disdain to love an earthly woman, little-minded, and in whom perfection is not. Therewith the tears began to run from her eyes, but Agatha looked on her with a subtle smile, and said, O my lady, and thou hast scarce seen him. And yet I will not say but that I understand this, but as to the matter of a goddess, I know not. Many would say that thou sitting on thine ivory chair in thy golden raiment, with thy fair bosom and white arms and yellow hair, wert not ill done for the image of a goddess. And this young man may well think so of thee. However that may be, there is something else I will say to thee, and thou knowest that I speak the truth to thee, most often, though I be wily. This is the word, that although thou hast time and again treated me like the thrall I am, I deem thee no ill woman, but rather something over good for Utterbol and the dark lord thereof. Now sat the lady shaken with sobs and weeping without stint, but she looked up at that word and said, Nay, nay, Agatha, it is not so. Today hath this man's eyes been a candle to me, that I may see myself truly, and I know that though I am a queen and not uncomely, I am but coarse and little-minded. I rage in my household when the whim takes me, and I am hot-headed and masterful and slothful, and should be untrue, if there were any force to drive me thereto. And I suffer my husband to go after other women, and this new thrall is especial, so that I may take my pleasure unstayed with other men whom I love not greatly. Yes, I am foolish and empty-headed and unclean, and all this he will see through my queenly state, and my golden gown and my white skin withal. Agatha looked on her curiously, but smiling no more. At last she said, What is to do then? Or must I think of something for thee? I know not, said the lady between her sobs. Yet if I might be in such case that he might pity me, belike it might blind his eyes to the ill part of me. Yea, she said, rising up and falling, walking to and fro swiftly, if he might hurt me and wound me himself, and I so loving him. Said Agatha coldly, Yes, lady, I am not wily for naught, and I both deem that I know what is in thine heart, and that it is good for something, and moreover that I may help thee somewhat therein. So in a few days thou shalt see whether I am worth something more than hard words and beating. Only thou must promise in all wise to obey me, though I be the thrall, and thou the lady, and to leave all the whole matter in my hands. Quoth the lady, That is easy to promise, for what may I do by myself? Then Agatha fell pondering a while, and said thereafter, First thou shalt get me speech with my lord, and cause him to swear immunity to me whatsoever I shall say or do herein. Said the lady, Easy is this. What more hast thou? Said Agatha, It were better for thee not to go forth to see the jousting, because thou art not to be trusted that thou show not thy love openly when the youngling is in peril. And if thou put the Lord to shame openly before the people, he must needs thwart thy will, and be fierce and cruel, and then it will go hard with thy darling. So thou shalt not go from the pavilion till the night is dark, and thou mayest feign thyself sick meantime. Sick enough shall I be, and I may not go forth to see how my love is faring in his peril. This at least is hard to me, but so be it. At least thou wilt come and tell me how he speedeth. Oh, yes, said Agatha, if thou must have it so. But fear thou not, he shall do well enough. Said the lady, Ah, but thou wottest how oft it goes with a chance stroke, that the point pierceth where it should not, nay, where by likelihood it could not. Nay, said Agatha, what chance is there in this, when the youngling knoweth the whole manner of the play, and his foemen know not thereof? It is as the chance betwixt Geoffrey the minstrel and Black Anselm, when they play at chess together, that Anselm must needs be mated ere he hath time to think of his fourth move. I wot of these matters, my lady. Now further, I would have thy leave to marshal thy maids about the seat where thou shouldest be, and moreover there should be someone in thy seat, even if I sat in it myself. Said the lady, Yea, sit there if thou wilt. Woe's me, said Agatha, laughing, why should I sit there? I am like to thee, am I not? Yea, said the lady, as the swan is like to the loon. Yea, my lady, said Agatha, which is the swan, and which is the loon? Well, well, fear not, I shall set Joyce in thy seat by my lord's leave. She is tall and fair, and forsooth somewhat like to thee. Wilt thou do this? Quoth the lady. Why should Thrall sit in my seat? Said Agatha, Oh, the tale is long to tell, but I would confuse that young man's memory of thee somewhat, if his eyes fell on thee at all, when ye met and now, which is to be doubted. The lady started up in a sudden wrath, and cried out, She had best not be too like me then, and strive to draw his eyes to her, or I will have her marked for diversity betwixt us. Take heed, take heed. Agatha looked softly on her, and said, My lady, ye fair-skinned, open-faced woman, should look to it not to show yourselves angry before menfolk, for open wrath marreth your beauty sorely. Leave scowls and fury to the dark-browed, who can use them without wrying their faces like 3 months' baby with a colic. Now that is my last rede as now, for methinks I can hear the trumpets blowing for the arraying of the tourney, wherefore I must go see to matters while thou hast but to be quiet. And tonight make much of my lord, and bid him to see me tomorrow, and give heed to what I shall say to him. But if I meet him without now, as is most like, I shall bid him into thee, that thou mayest tell him of Joyce and her sitting in thy seat. Otherwise I will tell him as soon as he is set down in his place. Sooth to say, he is little like to quarrel with either of thee or me for setting a fair woman other than thee by his side. Therewith she lifted the tent-lap and went out, stepping daintily with her slender body swaying like a willow branch. She came at once face to face with the Lord of Utterbol, and bowed low and humbly before him, though her face, unseen of him, smiled mockingly. The Lord looked on her greedily, and let his hand and arm go over her shoulder and about her side, and he drew her to him and kissed her, and said, What, Agatha, and why art thou not bringing forth thy mistress to us? She raised her face to him, and murmured softly, as one afraid, but with a wheedling smile on her face and in her eyes, Nay, my lord, she will abide within to-day, for she is ill at ease. If your grace goeth in, she will tell thee what she will have. Agatha, quoth he, I will hear her, and I will do her pleasure if thou ask me so to do. Then Agatha cast down her eyes, and her speech was so low and sweet that it was as the cooing of a dove, as she said, O my lord, what is this word of thine? He kissed her again, and said, Well, well, but dost thou ask it? O yea, my lord, said she. It is done then, said the Lord. And he let her go, for he had been stroking her arm and shoulder, and she hurried away, laughing inwardly, to the ladies' women. But he went into the pavilion after he had cast one look at her. Chapter 37. How Ralph Jousted with the Aliens. Meanwhile Captain Otter had brought Ralph into the staked-out lists, which, being hastily pitched, were but slenderly done. And now the Upmead stripling stood there beside a good horse, which they had brought to him, and Otter had been speaking to him friendly. But Ralph saw the lord come forth from the pavilion and take his seat on an ivory chair, set on a turf ridge close to the stakes of the lists, for that place was used of custom for such games as they exercised in the lands of Utterbol. Then presently the ladies, women, came out with their tents, and being marshalled by Agatha, went up into the queen's pavilion. Whiles they came forth again presently like a bed of garden flowers moving, having in the midst of them a woman so fair and clad so gloriously that Ralph must needs look on her, though he were some way off, and take note of her beauty. She went and sat her down beside the lord, and Ralph doubted not that it was the queen, whom she had but glanced at when they first made stay before the pavilion. Sooth to say, Joyce, being well nigh as tall as the queen, and as white of skin, was otherwise as fairer woman. Now spake Otter to Ralph, I must leave thee here, lad, and go to the other side, as I am to run against thee. Said Ralph, Art thou to run first? Nay, but rather last, said Otter. They will try thee first with one of the sergeants, and if he overcome thee, then all is done, and thou art in an evil plight. Otherwise will they find another, and at last it will be my turn. So keep thee well, lad. Therewith he rode away, and there came to Ralph one of the sergeants, who brought him a spear, and bade him to horse. So Ralph mounted, and took the spear in hand, and the sergeant said, Thou art to run at whatsoever meeteth thee, when thou hast heard the third blast of the horn. Art thou ready? Yea, said Ralph, but I see that the spearhead is not rebaited, so that we are to play at sharps. Art thou afraid, youngling? Said the sergeant, who was old and crabbed. If that be so, go and tell the lord, but thou wilt find that he will not have his sport wholly spoiled, but will somehow make a bolt or shaft out of thee. Said Ralph, I did but jest. I deem myself not so near my death today as I have been twice this summer or oftener. Said the sergeant, It is ill jesting in matters wherein my lord hath to do. Now thou hast heard my word. Do after it. Therewith he departed, and Ralph laughed and shook the spear aloft, and deemed it not over-strong. But he said to himself that the spears of the others would be much the same. Now the horn blew up thrice, and at the latest blast Ralph pricked forth, as one well used to the tilt, but held his horse well in hand. And he saw a man come driving against him with his spear and the rest, and deemed him right big. But this withal he knew, that the man was ill arrayed, and was pulling on his horse as one not willing to trust him to the rush. And indeed he came on so ill that it was clear that he would never strike Ralph's shield fairly. So he swerved as they met, so that his spear point was never near to Ralph, who turned his horse toward him a little, and caught his foeman by the gear about his neck. And Ralph spurred on, so that he dragged him clean out of his saddle, and let him drop, and rode back quietly to his place, and got off his horse to see to his girths. He heard great laughter rising up from the ring of men, and from the women also, but the Lord of Utterbol cried out, Bring forth someone who doth not eat my meat for nothing, and set that wretch and dastard aside till the tilting be over, and then he shall pay a little for his wasted meat and drink. Ralph got into his saddle again, and saw a very big man come forth at the other end of the lists, and wondered if he should be the overthrown of him, but noted that his horse seemed not over good. Then the horn blew up, and he spurred on, and his foeman met him fairly in the midmost of the lists. Yet he laid his spear but ill, and as one who would thrust and foin with it, rather than letting it drive all it might, so that Ralph turned the whole point with his shield that it glanced off. But he himself smote the other full on the shoulder, and the shaft brake, but the point had pierced the man's armor, and the truncheon stuck in the wound. Yet since the spear was broken, he kept his saddle. The lord cried out, Well, Black Anselm, this is better done. Yet art thou a big man, and a well skilled to be beaten by a stripling. So the man was helped away, and Ralph went back to his place again. Then another man was gotten to run against Ralph, and it went the same like way, for Ralph smote him amidst of the shield, and the spear held, so that he fell floundering off his horse. 6 of the stoutest men of Utterbol did Ralph overthrow or hurt in this wise. And then he ran 3 courses with Otter, and in the first 2 each brake his spear fairly on the other. But in the third Otter smote not Ralph squarely, but Ralph smote full amidst of his shield, and so dight him that he well nigh fell, and could not master his horse, but yet just barely kept his saddle. Then the Lord cried out, Now make we an end of it. We have no might against this youngling, man to man, or else we would have Otter done it. This comes of learning a craft diligently. So Ralph got off his horse, and did off his helm, and awaited tidings. And anon came to him the surly sergeant, and brought him a cup of wine, and said, Youngling, thou art to drink this, and then go to my lord, and I deem that thou art in favour with him. So if thou art not too great a man, thou mightest put in a word for poor Redhead, that first man that did so ill. For my lord would have him set up, and head down and buttocks aloft, as a target for our bowmen, and it will be his luck if he be sped with the 3rd shot, and last not out to the 20th. Yea, certes, said Ralph, I will do no less, even if it anger the Lord. Oh, thou wilt not anger him, said the man, for I tell thee, thou art in favour. Yea, and for me also thou mightest say a word also, when thou becomest right great. For have I not brought thee a good bowl of wine? Doubt it not, man, said Ralph, if I once get safe to Utterbol, weary on it and all its ways. Said the sergeant, That is an evil wish for one who shall do well at Utterbol. But come, tarry not. So he brought Ralph to the lord, who sat still in his chair beside that fair woman, and Ralph did obeisance to him. Yet he had a sidelong glance also for that fair-seeming queen, and deemed her both proud-looking and so white-skinned that she was a wonder, like the queen of the fays. And it was just this that he had noted of the queen as he stood before her earlier in the day, when they first came into the vale. Therefore he had no doubt of his damsel's queenship. Now the Lord spake to him and said, Well, youngling, thou hast done well, and better than thy behest. And since ye have been playing at sharps, I deem thou wouldest not do ill in battle, if it came to that. So now I am like to make something other of thee than I was minded to at first, for I deem that thou art good enough to be a man. And if thou wilt now ask a boon of me, if it be not over great, I will grant it thee. Ralph put one knee to the ground and said, Great lord, I thank thee. But whereas I am in an alien land and seeking great things, I know of no gift which I may take for myself, save leave to depart, which I deem thou wilt not grant me. Yet one thing thou mayst do for my asking, if thou wilt. If thou be still angry with the carle whom I first unhorsed, I pray thee pardon him his ill luck. Ill luck, said the lord. Why, I saw him that he was downright afraid of thee. And if my men are to grow blenchers and soft hearts, what is to do then? But tell me, Otter, what is the name of this carle? Said Otter, Redhead he hight, lord. Said the lord, And what like a man is he in a fray? Not so ill, lord, said Otter. This time, like the rest of us, he knew not his gear. It were scarce good to miss him at the next pinch. It were enough if he had the thongs over his back a few dozen times. It will not be the first day of such cheer to him. Ha, said the lord, and what for, Otter, what for? Because he has somewhat rough-handed, lord, said Otter. Then shall we need him and use him some day. Let him go scot-free, and do better another bout. There is thy boon granted for thee, knight. And another day thou mayest ask something more, and now shall David have a care of thee, and when we come to Utterbol, we shall see what is to be done with thee. Then Ralph rose up and thanked him, and David came forward and led him to his tent. And he was wheedling in his ways to him, as if Ralph were now become one who might do him great good, if so his will were. But the lord went back again into the tower. As to the lady, she abode in her pavilion amidst many fears and desires, till Agatha entered and said, My lady, so far all has gone happily. Said the lady, I deemed from the noise and the cry that he was doing well. But tell me, how did he? My lady, quoth Agatha, he knocked our folk about well favouredly, and seemed to think little of it. And Joyce, said the lady, how did she? She looked a queen, every inch of her, and she is tall, said Agatha. Soothly some folk stared on her, but not many knew of her, since she is but new into our house. Though it is a matter of course that all save our new-come knight knew that it was not thou that sat there. And my lord was well pleased, and now he hath taken her by the hand and led her into the tower. The lady read it and scowled and said, And he? Did he come anigh her? O yea, said Agatha, whereas he stood before my lord a good while, and then kneeled to him to pray pardon for one of our men who had done ill in the tilting. Yea, he was nigh enough to her to touch her had he dared, and to smell the fragrance of her raiment, and he seemed to think it good to look out of the corner of his eyes at her, though I do not say that she smiled on him. The lady sprang up, her cheeks burning, and walked about angrily a while, striving for words, till at last she said, When we come home to Utterbol, my lord will see his new thrall again, and will care for Joyce no whit. Then will I have my will of her, and she shall learn, she whether I am verily the least of women at Utterbol. Ha, what sayest thou? Now wilt thou stand and smile on me? Yea, I know what is in thy thought, and in very sooth it is good that the dear youngling hath not seen this new thrall, this Ursula. Forsooth, I tell thee that if I durst have her in my hands, I would have a true tale out of her as to why she weareth ever that pair of beads about her neck. Now, Our Lady, said Agatha, thou art marring the fairness of thy face again. I bid thee be at peace, for all shall be well, and other than thou deemest. Tell me, then, didst thou not get our lord to swear immunity for me? Said the lady, Yea, he swore on the edge of the sword that thou mightest say what thou wouldest, and neither he nor any other should lay hand on thee. Good, said Agatha. Then I will go to him tomorrow morning, when Joyce is gone from him. But now hold up thine heart, and keep close for these 2 days that we shall yet abide in Tower Dale. And trust me, this very evening I shall begin to set tidings going that shall work and grow, and shall one day rejoice thine heart. So fell the talk betwixt them. This is the end of chapters 36 and 37 of The Well at the World's End, a tale by William Morris. In the next video, we will begin with chapter 38, entitled, A Friend Gives Ralph Warning. Thank you for listening.